Hola, clase. So I decided to make you a video today because I tried teaching in Spanish 4 this morning and it was rough. So I'm just going to do this one time. And this way you can pause it if you need to. You can take some notes and then I'll be back on Tuesday and we will talk about everything then. Okay. So you definitely need some notes. You need to write this stuff down and then you'll be able to work on your assignment that is on Canvas for today. All right, so first I want to talk to you about some additional information regarding preterite and imperfect and a couple of trigger words that are going to help us to create different types of sentences that are super, super useful. Okay, so first of all, when we talk about the imperfect, we know that it's not scap, right? So when it comes to the S stands for single. So when it's not single, it's multiple. And so we talked about our childhood and we talked about me gustaba jugar con mi oso de peluche, right? Or yo saltaba la cuerda y montaba en bicicleta con amigos. And obviously, all the activities from our childhood are things that we did many, many times. And so, habitual in the past, the idea of used to in the past, those are scenarios of not a single action. Okay. So, the next use of the imperfect is not completed. So if an action is not completed in the past at the time, like I'm telling you a story about something that happened in the past, if it wasn't completed at that time, we often in our English brain hear the use of the word ing, right? So for example, I was studying when my dad got home from work, right? So I wasn't done studying. It's not preterite where I studied and then he came home from work and then we had dinner and then, right? No, it's the action was still in progress. It was not completed. So if you want to express an action not completed, still in progress, still happening, there's two ways you can do that. You can say, for example, I was studying. You can say, yo estudiaba. So you can take the verb to study and you put it in the imperfect. Yo estudiaba cuando mi padre llegó a la casa, right? Cuando mi padre llegó a la casa. Because obviously his returning, his arriving is a single completed action, but my studying was still in progress. Okay, but you can also say for this exact same sentence, instead of yo estudiaba, you could say yo estaba estudiando. It means the exact same thing, but estaba estudiando is more what your English brain was thinking, right? But now, instead of taking estudiar and putting it in the imperfect, you're taking estar and putting it in the imperfect, and then using the ing form of the verb. Yo estaba estudiando cuando mi padre llegó a la casa. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. They're literally interchangeable. It doesn't matter if you use estudiaba or estaba estudiando, because what you're communicating is an action in progress. I was studying. Okay, so there are two trigger words that I want to talk about now, and we're going to be using these ideas, these ando, yendo, or the verb in the imperfect to express. Okay, so the first one is cuando, and the next one is mientras. Okay, now you know that cuando means when. So after the word cuando, we are going to see that we will be using the preterite, just like in that example sentence. But before the cuando, or in the other half of the sentence, I'll give you some examples. we're going to be using the imperfect to express that something was happening, imperfect, when that action was interrupted. We call it action interrupted, okay? And that cuando triggers the action interrupted. But by using cuando, you're telling me that something else was happening when, boom, one thing occurred. So these are sentences where we have both the imperfect and the preterite happening together to communicate an action interrupted. So we're going to practice a bunch, okay, but I'll give you some examples right here. So I could say, yo estaba cocinando cuando sonó la alarma del fuego. I was cooking when the fire alarm sounded. Yo estaba cocinando cuando sonó la alarma del fuego. I could also say yo cocinaba cuando sonó la alarma del fuego. They mean the same thing in this context, okay? Los mayores estaban charlando cuando el bebé empezó a llorar. The adults were chit-chatting, right? Los mayores estaban charlando, or los mayores charlaban cuando el bebé empezó a llorar. Now, I could swap these little mini sentences, these little parts, and I could say, cuando el bebé empezó a llorar, los mayores estaban charlando. So I can actually put the cuando first, but the idea is that after the cuando is the preterite, because that's the action that interrupted. The baby started to cry, interrupted the adults chatting, okay? But at this point in my story, the adults were chatting cuando el bebé empezó a llorar. Okay, so we're going to practice that a bunch, but I want to first tell you again about, where did my shared screen go? The word mientras. Okay, so mientras means while, and you will use the imperfect on both sides of the word while. Okay, while is a duration. I was reading while my daughter was watching TV. Even if your English brain says I was reading while she watched TV, it's still both verbs will be in the imperfect, okay, because the action was not over. At this point in my story, it's a duration. It's this was happening while this was happening. So both sides of mientras will be imperfect. And what I mean by both sides is like this. So ayer por la tarde, yo hablaba por teléfono mientras mi hija tocaba el piano. Y yo le pregunté, por favor, cállate, o por favor, puedes no tomar el piano, whatever, right? So like, for example, what I'm saying here, why does that keep, I was talking on the phone while she was playing the piano, and I asked her, please stop. I can't hear my conversation, right? I was still talking on the phone. She was still playing the piano. Yo hablaba por teléfono mientras mi hija tocaba el piano. Could I put yo estaba hablando y mi hija estaba tocando? Yes, because it says the same thing. It means the same thing, okay? All right, I know that's not a whole lot of example there, but I want to get to your assignment, which if you go into your Canvas, you'll see this document here, okay? So on a separate piece of paper, you're going to answer these questions, and I'll give you a couple of examples and do a couple with you right now. So remember that with time and age, we always use imperfect. So this is an example of using imperfect and then preterite after the word cuando, but it's not so much an action in progress as much as it is other uses of imperfect, such as time and age. So for example, the first one, ¿qué hora era? What time was it? Cuando, boom, that triggers preterite. What time was it when you went to bed last night? ¿Qué hora era cuando te acostaste anoche? So I would answer this by saying, eran las 10 cuando me acosté anoche. I could swap that and say, cuando me acosté anoche eran las 10. Okay. Yes, you can also say me acosté a las 10, but I want you to practice this idea of telling time in the past with the imperfect and responding to cuando as a trigger for the preterite, okay? ¿Qué hora era cuando comiste la cena? So you just answer these on paper, and I will check them on Tuesday and we will talk about them. ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando aprendiste a montar en bicicleta? Sorry, that should say a montar en bicicleta. ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando aprendiste a montar en bicicleta? So I would say, yo tenía 5 años cuando aprendí a montar en bicicleta. Más o menos. Yo no recuerdo exacto, pero más o menos yo tenía 5 años. Okay? So, vas a contestar estas preguntas. This one says, ¿a qué hora or cuántos años tenías cuando pudiste caminar? When you could walk. ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando asististe a la escuela de Providence por primera vez? These are the same question. You attended Providence for the first time. ¿En cuántos años tenías cuando te quedaste solo en casa? How old were you when you stayed home alone for the first time? You might not remember exactly, and that's okay. Just give us something to practice the Spanish. All right, so then you've got some more examples of age and time, etc. for these. For example, the siblings were 16 when they drove for the first time, okay? You all were or had 24 years when you got married. So you're practicing these ideas with your días festivos, vocabulary. Okay, then down here, you've got some more practice with cuando, your action in progress with the imperfect, then the word cuando, and then your interrupting action, which is in the preterite. For example, ella trabajaba en el examen cuando la alarma sonó. And yes, you could say ella estaba trabajando, either way. Nosotros hacíamos un picnic cuando empezó a llover. Yo estaba cocinando cuando las hijas llegaron a casa. Okay, so you're going to put some sentences to tell me. ¿Qué hacían los parientes de Isabela or Isabel cuando ella llegó a la fiesta? So what were these relatives doing? What were they doing when Isabel arrived at the party? Okay, so on your notes, you're going to put together a few sentences. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different relatives. So just give me five different things that they were doing. Okay, and then the last thing I want you to do, and this is just try this out. What were relatives of Isabel doing while they waited for the arrival of Isabela? So think about a few minutes prior to this picture, before Isabela got there. We could say that mi primo Federico estaba bebiendo mientras su hermana estaba comiendo. So he was drinking all the juice while she was eating. We could say that the cousins were sleeping and the aunts and uncles were leaving. So what were some things going on while other things were going on? Or what was going on while they were waiting? Mientras esperaban. Okay, so remember, cuando triggers the preterite, but before cuando, there was an action in progress. That's imperfect. Mientras triggers both parts. Both sides of mientras are in the imperfect. Okay, so I want you guys to give that a shot. You'll get full credit for trying. Write out your answers on paper, and we will go over them in class on Tuesday, and I will be back. And I can't wait to see you guys and hear how you've been doing. All right, thanks for staying on task. I'm proud of you guys. Hasta luego.